Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sleep Seas. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day filled with the rush of deadlines and obligations. Or perhaps you're the kind of person who finds peace not in counting sheep, but in drifting through the wonders that hide beneath the waves. Either way, you've come to the right place. Tonight's journey will carry you through the life of one of the ocean's most magnificent hunters, a creature that has captivated human imagination for centuries and continues to reveal secrets in the blue depths where few eyes can follow. You have nothing to do right now but rest. Let your shoulders drop, your breathing slow, and your body settle into whatever position feels most comfortable. There's no test at the end of this, no need to remember every detail. Just let the words wash over you like gentle waves, carrying you deeper into relaxation with each passing moment. Because tonight we're following the swordfish, a remarkable predator that roams the open ocean with grace and power that seems almost impossible. The swordfish is not merely another fish in the sea. It stands alone in the animal kingdom as the sole member of its family, bearing a name that comes from both Greek and Latin words for sword. This creature has evolved over millions of years into something extraordinary, a hunter equipped with adaptations that push the boundaries of what we thought fish could do. It can warm its own brain in the freezing depths. It can dive deeper than most submarines were designed to go. It can accelerate with bursts of speed that would leave most predators struggling in its wake. And it does all of this while navigating an environment that covers most of our planet, yet remains largely unknown to us. Over the next hour and a half, we'll explore every aspect of these remarkable creatures, from the iconic blade that extends from their face to the microscopic larvae that drift in warm currents, from their solitary hunting style in the midnight zone to their spawning rituals in tropical waters, from their ancient evolutionary origins to their current relationship with humans who both admire and harvest them. We'll discover how they see in near-total darkness, how they survive temperature changes that would shock most animals into stillness, and how they've managed to thrive in every temperate and tropical ocean on Earth. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you. The swordfish doesn't actually spear its prey the way you might imagine. It doesn't swim in schools like most fish do. And despite being cold-blooded, it possesses a heating system more sophisticated than those found in many warm-blooded animals. These contradictions make the swordfish endlessly fascinating, a living reminder that the ocean still holds creatures whose abilities challenge our understanding of biology itself. So settle in deeper now. Let the weight of the day fall away. In the darkness behind your closed eyes, imagine the vast blue expanse of open ocean, where the light from above fades into shadows, and those shadows eventually give way to perfect darkness. Somewhere in that blue realm, a swordfish is gliding through the water right now, its powerful body cutting through the current with barely a ripple, its large eyes scanning for movement, its ancient instincts guiding it through territories that have belonged to its kind for ages beyond counting. Take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin. The first thing anyone notices about a swordfish is the bill, that long, flattened extension of the upper jaw that gives the species its common name and has inspired countless stories, myths, and misconceptions over the centuries. It's a blade in form, though not exactly in function, and it represents one of the most distinctive adaptations found anywhere in the animal kingdom. The bill of a swordfish is not round like that of a marlin or sailfish, both of which are distant relatives. Instead, it's flat and broad, smoothed on both sides like a true sword blade, though one that tapers to a relatively blunt point rather than a sharp edge. This flattened shape serves purposes that researchers are still working to fully understand, though we've learned much about how swordfish actually use this remarkable tool. The length of the bill is extraordinary. In a fully grown adult, it can account for a significant portion of the fish's total length, sometimes extending 3 feet or more from the head. The surface is relatively smooth compared to the bills of other billfish, lacking the rough texture or the prominent serrations found on some of their cousins. Instead, it presents a sleek face to the water, reducing drag as the fish swims and allowing for the rapid lateral movements that define the swordfish's hunting technique. Underneath that smooth exterior lies a complex structure. The bill is composed primarily of bone, specifically elongated premaxillary and nasal bones that have fused and extended forward during the fish's evolutionary history. This bony core is covered with a layer of specialized tissue that both protects the bone and allows for some degree of sensation, helping the swordfish understand what its bill encounters in the darkness of deep water. The weight of the bill might seem like it would make the swordfish front heavy, causing it to tip forward as it swims, but evolution has balanced this through careful distribution of mass. The swordfish's body is designed to account for the weight of its bill, with musculature and internal structures positioned to maintain perfect equilibrium in the water. The result is a fish that can maneuver with precision despite carrying what amounts to a 3-foot extension off its face. For decades, people assumed that swordfish used their bills exactly as the name suggests, spearing prey like underwater knights with lances. This image captured imaginations and appeared in countless books, films, and fishing tales. The truth, as scientists discovered through careful observation and study, is simultaneously less dramatic and more sophisticated. Swordfish don't spear their prey, they slash. The hunting technique involves swimming rapidly toward or alongside a school of fish or a single larger target, then whipping the bill from side to side in powerful sweeping motions. These slashes can move with remarkable speed, the bill cutting through the water fast enough to stun, injure, or kill prey without ever actually impaling it. The technique is more akin to using a sword in the traditional sense, swinging it as a weapon rather than thrusting it like a spear. This method has several advantages. First, it allows the swordfish to injure multiple prey animals with a single pass through a school, increasing the efficiency of each hunting run. Second, it avoids the problem that would arise if prey actually became impaled on the bill. A swordfish with a fish stuck on its sword would face the difficult task of removing it before eating, wasting valuable time and energy. The slashing technique leaves stunned or wounded prey floating in the water, easy to circle back and consume. The force generated by these slashes is considerable. The swordfish's powerful neck muscles and streamlined body allow it to accelerate the bill through the water at speeds that create significant impact. Prey struck by the blade often suffer broken bones, torn flesh, or sufficient trauma to leave them disoriented and unable to escape. For smaller prey, a single strike may be fatal. Larger animals might receive multiple strikes before the swordfish moves in to feed. Scientists have also observed swordfish using their bills for another purpose entirely. In areas where the seafloor is accessible, they sometimes use the bill to probe the sediment, rooting around in sand or mud to flush out hidden prey like crustaceans or bottom-dwelling fish. This behavior reveals the bill's versatility as both a weapon and a tool, capable of functions that go beyond simply stunning passing fish. The bill also serves a defensive function, though this is less commonly observed. When threatened by sharks or other large predators, swordfish can and will use their bills as weapons. There are documented cases of dead sharks found with broken swordfish bills embedded in their bodies, silent testimony to battles fought in the deep where the swordfish emerged victorious, though at the cost of its primary weapon. A swordfish can survive with a broken or damaged bill, continuing to feed and function, but such injuries surely diminish its hunting effectiveness. Interestingly, young swordfish don't have bills at first. When they hatch from their eggs, tiny larvae measure only about 4 millimeters in length, and their snouts are barely longer than their heads. But growth is rapid. The bill begins to develop when the larvae reach about 12 millimeters in length, and by the time a young swordfish reaches 50 centimeters, its bill has grown to distinctive proportions, already marking it as a member of its unique family. The bill's development continues throughout the fish's life, growing in proportion to its body. This means that the largest swordfish, which can reach 14 or even 15 feet in total length, carry bills of truly impressive dimensions, weapons that command respect from everything else in their environment. That distinctive blade cutting through the water is more than just a hunting tool or a distinguishing characteristic. It's a testament to millions of years of evolution, refining a structure that allows the swordfish to exploit prey and occupy ecological niches that would be difficult to access otherwise. When you picture a swordfish in your mind, that bill is likely the first feature that appears, and rightfully so, for it defines these animals in ways that go far beyond simple appearance, shaping every aspect of how they move through the ocean and interact with the life they encounter there. Behind that impressive bill lies a body designed for power, speed, and endurance across vast expanses of open ocean. The swordfish is built like few other fish in the sea, a combination of strength and hydrodynamics that allows it to chase prey through cold depths and warm surface waters with equal capability. The body is elongated but substantial, thick through the middle and tapering toward both ends in a shape that minimizes resistance as it moves through water. Unlike the compressed bodies of many reef fish or the eel-like forms of some deep-sea dwellers, the swordfish presents a rounded profile, almost circular when viewed head-on. This shape cuts through water efficiently while providing space for the powerful muscles that drive its swimming motions. The skin of an adult swordfish is smooth and scaleless, a characteristic that sets it apart from most fish species. Young swordfish do hatch with scales, tiny protective plates that cover their bodies as they drift through surface waters in their early weeks of life. But as they grow, approaching a length of about 1 meter, those scales gradually disappear, absorbed or shed until the adult fish presents nothing but smooth skin to the surrounding water. This transformation serves the adult's lifestyle well, reducing drag and allowing water to flow smoothly past the body without the turbulence that scales might create. The loss of scales is matched by the loss of teeth. Again, juvenile swordfish have teeth, small sharp points useful for grabbing the zooplankton and tiny fish that make up their early diet. But adult swordfish are entirely toothless, their jaws smooth and their mouths adapted for swallowing prey, whole rather than biting or chewing. This might seem like a disadvantage, but combined with their bill-slashing hunting strategy, it works perfectly. Prey is either killed or stunned by strikes from the bill, rendering it incapable of escape, and the swordfish simply swims forward and engulfs it in a single motion. The coloration of a swordfish follows a pattern common among open ocean predators. The dorsal surface, the top of the fish, ranges from dark brown to deep blue-black, providing camouflage when viewed from above against the dark depths below. The ventral surface, the belly and underside, fades to silver or light gray, making the fish harder to see when viewed from below against the bright surface waters. This countershading is a time-tested survival strategy, helping the swordfish avoid detection by both prey and the few predators large enough to threaten an adult. The fins deserve special attention, for they reveal much about how swordfish move. The first dorsal fin, rising from the fish's back just behind the head, is tall and distinctly crescent-shaped, curving backward like a sickle. This fin is quite large in proportion to the body, especially in juveniles, and it serves as both a stabilizer during swimming and possibly as a signaling device that other swordfish can see from a distance. The second dorsal fin is much smaller, set far back on the body near the tail, and it plays a more minor role in steering and stability. The anal fins, located on the ventral side of the body, follow a similar pattern. The first anal fin is prominent and curved, while the second is reduced to a small triangle near the tail. The pectoral fins, extending from the sides behind the gills, are relatively small and do little to propel the fish, instead serving primarily for fine control during slow maneuvering. Most notably, swordfish lack pelvic fins entirely. These are the paired fins that most fish have on their belly, but swordfish have lost them completely over evolutionary time. Their absence further streamlines the body, eliminating any protrusions that might create drag during high-speed pursuits. The tail is a masterpiece of engineering. Shaped like a broad crescent or a half-moon, it's perfectly designed to generate thrust through lateral movements. The upper and lower lobes are approximately equal in size, creating symmetry that allows for powerful, efficient swimming. The tail is not just decorative flourish, it's the primary engine that drives a swordfish through the water, capable of generating the force needed to accelerate the fish's considerable mass from a leisurely cruise to a burst of speed that would challenge most ocean predators. The internal anatomy is equally impressive, though hidden from casual observation. The muscles that power the tail and drive the body forward are dense and rich with myoglobin, the protein that stores oxygen and gives the flesh its characteristic color. These muscles can work both aerobically and anaerobically, meaning the swordfish can maintain steady swimming for extended periods, but also call upon reserves for short bursts of intense activity when chasing prey or evading threats. The circulatory system contains modifications that become crucial when we discuss the swordfish's most remarkable adaptation, its ability to warm certain parts of its body. But even setting that aside, the heart and blood vessels are built to handle the demands of an active predator, pumping oxygenated blood to tissues throughout the body and returning deoxygenated blood to the gills for renewal. Size varies considerably among swordfish, with females typically growing much larger than males. An average adult caught in commercial fisheries might weigh between 50 and 200 pounds and measure anywhere from 6 to 10 feet in length, with the bill accounting for a significant portion of that measurement. But these are modest specimens compared to the true giants of the species. The largest swordfish ever reliably documented measured just under 15 feet from the tip of the bill to the end of the tail and weighed over 1,400 pounds. That's a fish the size of a small car, with bulk and power to match. Such enormous individuals are rare today, as fishing pressure tends to remove the largest specimens before they reach their full potential size. But historical records and occasional modern catches remind us that swordfish can achieve truly impressive dimensions given enough time and sufficient food. Growth rates are rapid, especially in the early years. A swordfish that hatches as a 4mm larva can reach nearly 3 feet in length within its first year of life, an explosive rate of growth that ranks among the fastest in the ocean. This rapid development is fueled by voracious feeding and supported by the warm surface waters where young swordfish spend their time. As they mature, growth continues but slows, with females ultimately reaching larger sizes than males, possibly because the demands of egg production require greater body mass and energy reserves. The body of a swordfish, then, is a carefully balanced instrument. Every curve, every fin, every aspect of its shape has been refined by evolution to create an animal capable of thriving in one of Earth's most challenging environments. From the smooth, scaleless skin that reduces drag to the crescent-shaped tail that generates thrust. From the powerful muscles that drive endless swimming to the streamlined profile that slices through water with minimal resistance. The swordfish is built for exactly what it does, hunting in the open ocean across a range of depths and temperatures that would challenge almost any other fish in the sea. When you imagine this creature now, let the details accumulate in your mind like layers of watercolor, each one adding depth to the picture. The dark back fading to silver below, the tall first dorsal fin standing proud, the massive muscular body tapering to that crescent tail, and at the front, that unmistakable bill, cutting through the water as the fish makes its way through the blue expanse, solitary and purposeful, driven by instincts as ancient as the ocean itself. But perhaps the most extraordinary adaptation possessed by the swordfish is one that remains invisible to the casual observer, hidden beneath skin and bone in a specialized mass of tissue that scientists didn't fully understand until surprisingly recently. This is the heat organ, a biological furnace that allows the swordfish to accomplish something almost unheard of among fish, warming parts of its body to temperatures well above the surrounding water. Most fish are cold-blooded, or more accurately, ectothermic. Their body temperature matches whatever environment they inhabit. A fish swimming in cold water is cold throughout its body. A fish in warm water is warm throughout. They have no ability to generate and maintain internal heat the way birds and mammals do, and this limitation constrains where they can go and how effectively they can function in different environments. But swordfish break this rule, at least partially. They possess a specialized organ associated with one of their eye muscles, specifically the superior rectus muscle, that has evolved into a heat-generating tissue, unlike anything found in most other fish. This organ, sometimes called a heater organ or thermogenic tissue, sits just beneath the brain and near the eyes, perfectly positioned to warm the most critical sensory and processing centers in the fish's body. The tissue itself is dense with mitochondria, the cellular powerhouses that convert nutrients into energy. In most cells, much of that energy goes into useful work like muscle contraction or nerve signaling. But in the heater organ, the primary output is heat itself. The mitochondria in these cells work constantly, burning fuel and releasing thermal energy that radiates into the surrounding tissues. This heat doesn't dissipate immediately into the cold water. That would be wasteful and pointless. Instead, the swordfish has evolved a system of blood vessels arranged in a countercurrent exchange pattern. Warm blood leaving the heater organ flows in vessels that run parallel to cool blood returning from the gills. The two streams of blood flow in opposite directions, very close together, and heat transfers from the warm blood to the cool blood through the vessel walls. This means that blood arriving at the heater organ is already somewhat warmed, and it requires less energy to heat it further. Meanwhile, blood leaving the organ retains much of its heat as it flows to the brain and eyes, rather than losing that heat to the surrounding water. The entire system is embedded in thick masses of fatty tissue, particularly around the eyes, providing additional insulation that helps trap the generated heat in the areas where it's needed most. The brain itself sits in a cavity surrounded by this insulating fat, maintaining its elevated temperature even as cold water flows past the fish's body just millimeters away. The temperature difference this creates is remarkable. Measurements taken from free-swimming swordfish have shown that the brain and eyes can be 10 to 15 degrees Celsius warmer than the ambient water temperature. In some cases, when swordfish dive into particularly cold water in pursuit of deep-dwelling prey, this difference can be even greater. A swordfish swimming in water that's just a few degrees above freezing might maintain a brain temperature of 15 or even 20 degrees Celsius, allowing it to function normally in conditions that would slow most fish to lethargy. Why would a fish invest significant energy into warming just its brain and eyes? The answer lies in what that warmth provides. Neural tissue, the cells that make up the brain and process sensory information, works faster at higher temperatures. Chemical reactions happen more quickly. Signals travel faster along nerve pathways. A warm brain can process information more rapidly than a cold one, giving the swordfish a significant advantage when hunting. The eyes benefit even more specifically. The retina, the light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye, contains cells that detect photons and convert that light into neural signals. The speed at which these cells can respond and recover, ready to detect the next photon, improves dramatically at higher temperatures. Research has shown that warming the retina increases its temporal resolution by up to 10-fold, meaning a swordfish with warm eyes can detect motion and track fast-moving targets far more effectively than a cold-eyed fish. This becomes crucial when hunting in deep, dark water where light is scarce and prey often moves in rapid bursts. A squid fleeing through the gloom might be nothing but a blur to a cold-eyed predator. But to a swordfish with its heated retinas operating at peak efficiency, that same squid becomes a trackable target, its movements resolved into distinct motions that the brain can predict and intercept. The heater organ functions constantly, not just when the swordfish dives deep. Even when swimming near the surface in relatively warm water, the organ maintains elevated temperatures in the brain and eyes. This might seem wasteful, but it actually allows the swordfish to take advantage of another important strategy: rapid transitions between different temperature zones. When a swordfish dives from warm surface water into the cold depths, the sudden temperature change would shock most fish, slowing their metabolism and reducing their effectiveness as predators. The swordfish with its pre-warmed brain and eyes suffers no such disadvantage. It can plunge from 20-degree water at the surface down to 4-degree water at depth without losing cognitive function or visual acuity. The heater organ maintains those critical systems at optimal operating temperature, regardless of external conditions. Conversely, when rising from cold depths back to the warm surface, the swordfish can regulate how quickly it warms back up by adjusting blood flow through different pathways. If it needs to heat rapidly, blood can bypass the countercurrent exchanges and flow more directly through warm tissues. If warming too quickly might be disadvantageous for some reason, blood can be routed through the heat exchanger system, moderating the rate of temperature change. This level of thermoregulation is sophisticated beyond what most people imagine fish capable of achieving. It places swordfish in a small, elite group of species that includes some tunas, certain sharks like the great white and short-fin mako, and the remarkable opar, each of which has evolved some form of regional endothermy. But among these species, swordfish are particularly specialized for warming the brain and eyes specifically, rather than the swimming muscles or other body regions. The energy cost of maintaining this heat organ is not trivial. The swordfish must consume more food to fuel the constant heat production, and those calories must come from successful hunting. This creates an interesting feedback loop. The heater organ helps the swordfish hunt more effectively by improving its vision and reaction time, which in turn provides the food energy needed to power the heater organ. It's a system that works as long as prey remains available, but it also means swordfish are somewhat more vulnerable to food scarcity than fish without such energetically expensive adaptations. The discovery of this heating system came gradually through the work of several researchers, but much of the credit goes to Dr. Francis Carey and his colleagues in the 1970s and 80s. Using temperature sensors and careful dissection, they mapped the location and structure of the heater organ, documented the temperature differences it created, and proposed theories about its function. Later work by other scientists confirmed and extended these findings, using improved technology to track free-swimming swordfish and measure their brain temperatures in real time as they moved through different water masses. The existence of the heater organ raises questions about the evolution of endothermy in fish. Why did some species develop this capability while others did not? What environmental pressures or opportunities favored the evolution of heat-generating tissues? And how did the complex systems of countercurrent exchangers and insulating fat develop over time, each step requiring genetic changes that somehow proved advantageous enough to spread through the population? We don't have complete answers to these questions, but we can make informed guesses. Swordfish occupy a niche that requires them to hunt across a wide range of depths and temperatures. They feed in cold, deep water where prey like squid and lanternfish are abundant, but they also spend time in warm surface layers, possibly for thermoregulation or breeding. A fish that could maintain consistent neural function across these temperature ranges would have significant advantages over competitors limited to narrower thermal windows. Over many generations, small changes that slightly improved thermal stability in the brain or eyes would have been favored by natural selection. Perhaps the earliest adaptation was simply thicker insulation around these organs, reducing heat loss. Later changes might have improved the efficiency of mitochondria in specific muscle tissues, generating more heat as a byproduct of normal function. Eventually, those tissues became specialized primarily for heat production, their original function as swimming muscles becoming secondary or lost entirely. The development of countercurrent exchangers probably happened gradually as well, with blood vessels that happened to run parallel to each other, capturing some heat transfer through simple proximity. Over time, the arrangement became more refined, with vessel placement, diameter, and length all optimized through countless small changes to maximize heat retention. Today, the result is a system that seems almost engineered in its sophistication, though of course it arose through the undirected process of evolution, each change preserved only if it improved the fish's chances of surviving and reproducing. The heater organ is not perfect. It has limitations and costs, but it works well enough to give swordfish access to hunting grounds and strategies that remain beyond the reach of most other predators. When you imagine a swordfish now, diving from the sun-drenched surface into the black depths below, picture that hidden furnace working beneath its skull, maintaining warmth in the darkness, keeping the brain sharp and the eyes keen as the water grows cold and the pressure increases. It's swimming through an environment that would slow most creatures to sluggishness, but the swordfish remains alert and active, powered by an adaptation that turns it from merely a large predatory fish into something truly exceptional. The swordfish's ability to warm its brain and eyes becomes most impressive when you consider where these fish actually spend their time. Unlike many predatory fish that patrol relatively shallow waters near coastlines or over continental shelves, swordfish are creatures of the open ocean, and they don't restrict themselves to any particular depth. Instead, they move vertically through the water column in patterns that take them from bright surface waters down into zones where darkness is nearly absolute. This vertical migration is one of the defining behaviors of swordfish, a daily rhythm that shapes how they hunt, where they're found, and how they interact with other species. During daylight hours, swordfish typically descend into deeper water, diving far below the surface layers where light still penetrates. Most commonly, they spend their days between 400 and 800 meters deep, though individuals have been recorded going much deeper, occasionally exceeding 1,000 meters in their downward excursions. At these depths, the water is cold and dark. Very little sunlight penetrates this far down, and what does arrive is limited to the shorter blue wavelengths that water absorbs most slowly. Most of this zone, called the mesopelagic or twilight zone by oceanographers, exists in a perpetual gloom where there's enough light to see shapes and shadows, but not enough for most forms of photosynthesis. Below about 1,000 meters, even that faint illumination disappears, and the ocean enters true darkness that will continue all the way to the abyssal plains thousands of meters farther down. Swordfish descended into these depths are not passive visitors. They're actively hunting, searching for the abundant prey that congregates in the twilight zone during daylight hours. Squid of various species are particularly common here, along with an assortment of fish that most people have never seen. Lanternfish with their bioluminescent organs, various species of hatchetfish with their bizarre compressed bodies, and countless other creatures adapted for life in the dim. The temperature in these deep layers depends on location and season, but it's typically quite cold, often between 4 and 12 degrees Celsius, even in tropical regions. The pressure is immense, increasing by approximately 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. At 600 meters, the pressure is 60 times greater than at the surface. At 1,000 meters, it's 100 atmospheres. Yet swordfish function normally under these conditions, their bodies designed to handle pressure extremes that would collapse unmodified structures. As evening approaches and the sun sinks toward the horizon, swordfish begin their ascent. This upward migration is typically quite direct, with the fish swimming steadily toward the surface as twilight fades to night. By the time full darkness has fallen, most swordfish have reached the upper layers of the ocean, often within the top 100 meters, and sometimes right at the surface itself. Here, in the warm mixed layer where wind and waves have stirred the water into relative uniformity, the swordfish continues to hunt, but the prey has changed. Many of the deep-dwelling species from the twilight zone have also migrated upward, following their own daily rhythms. They come to the surface to feed on the microscopic plankton that thrive in the sunlit surface waters, and the swordfish follow to feed on them. The temperature difference between the deep daytime foraging grounds and the shallow nighttime hunting areas can be dramatic. A swordfish might swim in water of 6 degrees during the day and 18 degrees at night, a 12-degree shift that it makes twice daily as a routine part of its lifestyle. This is where the brain heater becomes essential, buffering the swordfish from the cognitive and sensory impacts of such rapid temperature changes. At night, swordfish are most active hunters. Their large eyes, already impressive, are further enhanced by the warm temperatures the heater organ maintains, allowing them to detect prey in the darkness with remarkable effectiveness. They swim through schools of smaller fish, bill slashing, or they pursue individual squid, chasing the cephalopods through three-dimensional space as both predator and prey maneuver with rapid bursts of acceleration. Not every swordfish follows this pattern every day. Individual behavior varies, and observations show that some swordfish modify their vertical migrations based on factors like moon phase, prey availability, or simply individual preference. On nights when the moon is full and bright, casting significant light into the upper water layers, some swordfish remain deeper than usual, possibly because their prey becomes more visible to other predators in the moonlight and disperses more widely. On very dark nights, when the moon is new or obscured by clouds, swordfish may spend more time at the surface, taking advantage of the relative invisibility that darkness provides. There's also a behavior called basking that occasionally interrupts the typical pattern. Sometimes during daylight hours, swordfish will spend time at the surface, floating almost motionlessly with their large dorsal fin exposed to the air. The reasons for this behavior are not entirely clear, but most researchers believe it serves a thermoregulatory function. After hours spent in cold, deep water, a swordfish might come to the surface to warm its body in the sun-heated upper layers, absorbing heat that helps maintain metabolic functions, and perhaps reduces the energy cost of the heater organ for a time. Basking swordfish present a distinctive sight, that characteristic dorsal fin cutting the surface like a shark's, though the shape is different enough that experienced observers can tell them apart. In the days when swordfishing was done primarily by harpooning, these basking fish were the main targets, and skilled harpooners could approach them quietly by boat, getting close enough for a clean throw. Modern swordfish fishing uses different methods, but the image of a basking swordfish remains iconic. The depth capabilities of swordfish extend even beyond their typical ranges. While most hunting occurs between the surface and about 800 meters, exceptional dives have been recorded going much deeper. The deepest confirmed dive reached nearly 3,000 meters, well into the bathypelagic or midnight zone, where no natural light penetrates and the pressure approaches 300 atmospheres. What a swordfish might be doing at such extreme depth remains uncertain. It's possible they were pursuing particularly attractive prey or exploring territory, or perhaps the dive was simply an individual variation, one fish pushing boundaries that most of its species don't test. These deep dives and the daily vertical migrations they perform mark swordfish as one of the ocean's most vertically mobile predators. Very few species regularly travel across such a wide depth range. Sperm whales dive deeper in pursuit of giant squid, but they're air-breathing mammals that must return to the surface much more frequently. Some species of tuna and shark also perform vertical migrations, but few match the range or consistency of swordfish movements. This lifestyle has profound implications for the swordfish's role in ocean ecosystems. By feeding in the deep twilight zone and then moving to surface waters, swordfish effectively transport nutrients and energy from the depths to the surface. When they digest food consumed at depth, some of the nutrients are eventually excreted in surface waters where they can be used by plankton and small fish. In this way, swordfish act as a kind of biological elevator, connecting the deep ocean's productivity to the surface layers in ways that benefit the entire ecosystem. The vertical migrations also mean that swordfish encounter a wide variety of other species throughout the day and night. In the depths, they swim alongside deep-sea sharks, various species of squid, and the strange bioluminescent creatures that characterize the twilight zone. At the surface, they share space with dolphins, sea turtles, flying fish, and other predators like marlins and tunas. This range of encounters shapes the swordfish's behavioral repertoire, teaching each individual to recognize and respond to diverse threats and opportunities. As you drift further towards sleep now, imagine that vertical journey. See the swordfish beginning its descent as dawn light filters through the water, the surface growing dimmer above as it swims steadily down. The water cools around its body, but not inside its head, where the heater organ maintains warmth. Down through layers of gradually darkening blue, past schools of smaller fish that scatter at its approach, past the depth where most casual swimmers ever venture, down into zones where the pressure would compress human lungs to dangerous volumes, where the cold would numb unprotected skin, where the darkness makes navigation by sight almost impossible for ordinary eyes. But the swordfish's eyes are not ordinary, and its brain processes what it sees with clarity, undiminished by the cold or the pressure. It swims through the twilight zone as confidently as it does at the surface, hunting, always hunting, driven by the same ancient needs that have governed its kind for millions of years. And when night falls again, it will rise, ascending through the same waters it descended through, returning to the surface to hunt again, the cycle continuing night after night, year after year, for the entire span of its life. The hunting strategies of swordfish deserve careful attention, for they reveal much about how these predators think, how they move, and how they've adapted to succeed in one of the ocean's most challenging environments. Swordfish are not ambush predators that lie in wait for prey to wander past, nor do they cooperate in groups to herd or corral their targets. Instead, they are solitary pursuit predators, lone hunters that locate prey through keen senses and chase it down with speed and power. The hunt begins with detection. A swordfish swimming through the ocean, whether at depth during the day or near the surface at night, constantly scans its environment for signs of potential meals. Those large eyes, kept warm and functioning at peak efficiency by the heater organ, are the primary sensory tool. They gather every available photon of light, processing it through a retina packed with light-sensitive cells, building an image of the surrounding water that reveals movement even in near darkness. But vision is not the only sense at work. Swordfish, like most fish, have a lateral line system, a series of sensory organs along the sides of their body that detect water movements and vibrations. A school of fish swimming past generates pressure waves and currents that propagate through the water, and the lateral line picks up these signals, alerting the swordfish to the presence of potential prey even before it comes into view. Similarly, struggling or wounded prey creates irregular vibrations that the lateral line can detect at considerable distances, drawing the swordfish toward easy targets. The sense of smell also plays a role, though probably less immediately than vision or vibration detection. Water carries dissolved chemicals far from their sources, and a swordfish can likely detect the scent of prey on the current, using this information to make broad decisions about which direction to travel when actively searching for food. Once prey has been detected, the swordfish enters a pursuit phase. The style of pursuit depends on what's being chased. For schools of smaller fish like anchovies, mackerel, or herring, the swordfish employs a dramatic technique that makes full use of its namesake weapon. It accelerates toward the school, building speed until it's moving considerably faster than the prey fish can sustain. Then, as it reaches the school, it begins slashing its bill from side to side in rapid, powerful strokes. The mechanics of these slashes are impressive. The bill moves through an arc of considerable distance, perhaps covering 2 or 3 feet from the furthest extent of one side to the other, and it does so multiple times per second during the most intense moments of an attack. The force generated is substantial enough to batter fish, stunning or killing them outright. Many prey struck by the bill suffer broken spines or severe internal injuries from the impact, leaving them unable to swim properly even if they initially survive the strike. A single pass through a school might disable a dozen or more fish, depending on the density of the school and the accuracy of the swordfish's strikes. The swordfish doesn't try to eat while slashing. That would be impossible at high speed. Instead, it completes its pass through the school, slashing as many prey as it can, then circles back to begin consuming the stunned or dead fish floating in its wake. This technique is energy-intensive, requiring powerful bursts of speed and precise control, but it's highly effective when schools of prey are available. For larger individual prey like squid, the approach is somewhat different. Squid are intelligent, agile animals capable of rapid acceleration through jet propulsion, and they can change direction almost instantly. Chasing a squid requires prediction and anticipation, not just raw speed. The swordfish must track the squid's movements, guess where it will be rather than where it is, and position its attacks accordingly. Here, the bill's slashing motion remains important, but the context changes. A swordfish pursuing a single large squid might make multiple strikes, each one intended to wound or slow the squid rather than immediately kill it. Squid can survive surprisingly serious injuries, continuing to swim and evade even with significant damage to their mantles. But each successful strike reduces their ability to escape, and eventually, the cumulative damage leaves the squid vulnerable to capture. The speed of these pursuits can be remarkable. Swordfish are among the fastest fish in the ocean, though exact measurements are difficult to obtain, and historical claims of speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour are probably exaggerated. More careful studies of related species suggest that swordfish likely reach sustainable speeds of around 20 to 30 miles per hour, with brief bursts possibly pushing faster. That may not sound exceptional compared to land animals like cheetahs, but water is much denser than air, and creating movement through it requires far more energy. A fish swimming at 30 miles per hour is demonstrating truly impressive power. The body design of the swordfish supports these bursts of speed beautifully. The streamlined shape minimizes drag, allowing water to flow smoothly around the fish with minimal turbulence. The powerful tail generates strong thrust with each stroke, driving the fish forward with accumulated force that builds into rapid acceleration. And the bill, rather than creating problematic drag as you might expect, actually helps cut through the water, parting it ahead of the fish's body and creating a slipstream that eases the passage of the rest of the fish. Swordfish also hunt on or near the seafloor in some situations, using their bills to probe sediment and root around in sand or rocky areas. This behavior has been observed through stomach content analysis, which sometimes reveals bottom-dwelling prey like certain crustaceans or flatfish that wouldn't normally be available in the open water column. The mechanics of this hunting style are less well understood, as it's harder to observe, but it likely involves the swordfish using its bill almost like a shovel, disturbing the substrate to flush out hidden prey. The solitary nature of swordfish hunting is worth emphasizing because it's unusual among large predators. Many sharks hunt alone, but many also cooperate in loosely coordinated groups when attacking large prey or schools. Tuna often feed in groups, each fish taking advantage of the chaos created by others. Dolphins famously work together with sophisticated coordination. Swordfish do none of this. They hunt alone, each individual responsible for its own detection, pursuit, and capture of prey. When multiple swordfish occupy the same general area, drawn by abundant food perhaps, they don't coordinate their efforts. Instead, they maintain separation, each one operating independently, sometimes even competing for the same prey. This solitary lifestyle probably reflects the swordfish's specific adaptations and needs. Their heat organs give them individual advantages that don't require coordination. Their bills are effective weapons for solo attacks but wouldn't easily integrate into group tactics. And the vast three-dimensional expanse of the open ocean provides enough space that competition between individual swordfish is probably less intense than it would be in more confined habitats. After a successful hunt, feeding is straightforward. The swordfish approaches the stunned or dead prey, opens its mouth, and swallows it whole. Remember, adult swordfish lack teeth, so there's no biting or tearing. Prey must be small enough to swallow entire, or if larger, must be already killed and passive. This is another reason why the bill slashing technique works so well. it produces prey in exactly the condition the swordfish needs for consumption. Digestion occurs relatively quickly, powered by the swordfish's active metabolism. The food is broken down, nutrients absorbed, waste expelled, and the process begins again. An adult swordfish probably consumes roughly 3% of its body weight in food each day, though this varies with water temperature, activity level, and prey availability. For a 200-pound swordfish, that means eating about 6 pounds of fish and squid daily, a substantial but achievable target in productive waters. Not every hunt succeeds, of course. Prey escape or are never located in the first place. Conditions might be poor for hunting, with murky water or unusual currents confusing the swordfish's senses. Competition from other predators might drive prey into hiding or to areas where the swordfish can't easily follow. So while swordfish are formidable hunters, they also experience the ordinary failures that all predators face, the missed opportunities and empty pursuits that punctuate the successes. As you imagine this hunter now, picture the moment of pursuit, the sudden acceleration from cruising speed to attack velocity. The bill beginning its lateral sweeps, cutting back and forth through the water with mechanical precision. The school of prey fish scattering in panic, some fleeing successfully, others caught by the slashing blade. The swordfish's momentum carrying it through and beyond the school. The turn, the return, the feeding on what was caught. It's a scene that plays out thousands of times every day across all the world's oceans, wherever swordfish swim, a fundamental interaction between predator and prey that has shaped both species over millions of years of evolution. The diet of a swordfish changes dramatically over the course of its life, reflecting the enormous size transformation that each individual undergoes from hatching to adulthood. What a larval swordfish eats bears little resemblance to the prey pursued by a fully grown adult, and this dietary flexibility is part of what makes swordfish so successful across such a wide range of ocean environments. When a swordfish first hatches from its egg, it measures only about 4 millimeters in length, barely visible to the naked eye. A translucent fragment of life drifting in the surface waters of tropical or subtropical seas. At this microscopic scale, the young swordfish is itself potential prey for countless other organisms, and its first priority is simply to survive long enough to grow into something more formidable. The food available to a larval swordfish consists of the ocean's smallest drifting creatures, the zooplankton. These include copepods, tiny crustaceans that swarm through the surface waters in numbers difficult to comprehend, along with the larvae of other fish species, microscopic jellyfish, and countless other organisms that make up the base of the ocean's food web. The larval swordfish, equipped with its newly developed mouth and digestive system, begins feeding on these minute prey items almost immediately after its yolk sac is absorbed. Growth is rapid during these early weeks. The larva adds length and weight daily, its developing bill becoming more prominent, its fins taking shape, its body transforming from a generic fish larva into something recognizably related to adult swordfish. As it grows, it graduates to slightly larger prey, still within the zooplankton community, but representing bigger targets that provide more nutrition per capture. By the time a young swordfish reaches juvenile size, measured in tens of centimeters, its diet has expanded to include small fish. These might be larvae or juveniles of other species, or they might be species that remain small throughout their lives, like certain anchovies or silversides. The juvenile swordfish, now equipped with its characteristic bill and capable of swimming with some power, begins practicing the slashing hunting technique that will define its adult predation style. The prey continues to increase in size as the swordfish grows. A swordfish of 50 centimeters might be eating fish of 5 or 10 centimeters, along with squid of similar size. By the time it reaches a meter in length, it can handle much larger prey, and its diet begins to resemble that of an adult, dominated by substantial fish and squid that provide the calories needed to fuel continued growth and the expensive heat organ. Adult swordfish are opportunistic predators, meaning they don't specialize on any single type of prey, but instead take advantage of whatever is abundant and accessible in their environment. That said, diet studies based on stomach contents have revealed clear patterns in what swordfish actually consume. Squid appear consistently as a major component of swordfish diet across all regions where the species has been studied. Various species of squid, from small schooling types to larger solitary species, all fall prey to swordfish. In some studies, squid made up more than 80% of the identifiable prey items, suggesting that these cephalopods are particularly important food sources. This makes sense given the overlap in habitat. Squid are abundant in the mesopelagic zone where swordfish hunt during the day, and many species of squid also migrate vertically, putting them in the path of swordfish both day and night. Fish make up the rest of the diet, with specific species varying by location. In the northwestern Atlantic, stomach content analysis has found mackerel, herring, bluefish, butterfish, various species of hake, and numerous deep-sea fish species like lanternfish and barracudinas. These fish represent both species that live near the surface and those that inhabit deeper zones, reflecting the swordfish's tendency to hunt across a wide depth range. In the Pacific, the diet shifts somewhat to reflect the different fish communities present there. Swordfish caught off California and Mexico have been found with remains of saris, Pacific hake, rockfish, and various species of squid, particular to the eastern Pacific. In the Mediterranean, swordfish consume abundant European anchovy and sardines along with regional squid species and deep-water fish. Crustaceans occasionally appear in swordfish stomachs, though they're typically less common than fish and squid. Larger shrimp and crabs can fall victim to swordfish, particularly individuals that hunt near the bottom or in areas where these crustaceans are especially abundant. The diet can vary seasonally as prey populations shift with water temperatures and oceanographic conditions. During periods when squid are spawning and aggregating in large numbers, swordfish may feed almost exclusively on them. When seasonal runs of bait fish like herring or sardines pass through an area, swordfish shift their attention to these abundant and accessible targets. Individual swordfish may also develop preferences or hunting specializations based on their own experiences. Some might become particularly adept at hunting squid in deep water, while others might focus more on schooling fish near the surface. These individual differences are hard to study but likely exist, as they do in many predator species. The quantity of food a swordfish requires is substantial but not extreme relative to its size. Estimates based on metabolic studies suggest that adult swordfish need to consume approximately 3% of their body weight per day to maintain their energy balance. This includes the energy needed for basic metabolism, for swimming, for the constant operation of the heat organ, and for growth or reproduction. For a 200-pound swordfish, 3% of body weight equals 6 pounds of prey per day. That might be a single large fish, a handful of medium-sized squid, or dozens of smaller prey items, depending on what's available. Spread across 24 hours, it's actually a manageable feeding requirement, especially given the abundance of prey in the productive waters where swordfish typically hunt. Feeding success probably varies considerably from day to day. On good days when prey is abundant and hunting conditions are favorable, a swordfish might consume well more than its daily requirement, building up fat reserves that can sustain it through less productive periods. On poor days, it might catch little or nothing, drawing on those reserves to maintain its energy balance. The digestive system of a swordfish is adapted to handle this varying intake and to process a wide range of prey types. The stomach is muscular and expandable, capable of holding significant quantities of food. Digestive enzymes break down the prey into nutrients that can be absorbed in the intestines, and waste products are eventually expelled. Interestingly, swordfish sometimes consume prey that seems oddly large or difficult to swallow. Examination of stomach contents has occasionally revealed fish that appear to have been barely small enough to fit through the swordfish's mouth, suggesting that these predators sometimes push the limits of what they can actually eat. This might happen when hunting opportunities are scarce and the swordfish is motivated to take any prey it can catch, regardless of whether it's an ideal size. The presence of indigestible items in swordfish stomachs provides valuable information to researchers about what the fish have been eating and where they've been feeding. Squid beaks, the hard, parrot-like structures that make up the squid's mouth parts, resist digestion and accumulate in the stomach. By examining these beaks, scientists can identify the species of squid consumed and estimate the sizes of the prey, building a detailed picture of the swordfish's recent feeding history. Scales and bones from fish also resist digestion to varying degrees, providing similar information about fish prey. Even the remains of crustacean exoskeletons can sometimes be recovered and identified, adding to the understanding of swordfish dietary patterns. One concern with swordfish diet particularly from a human health perspective, relates to bioaccumulation of contaminants. As a large predator feeding at the top of the ocean food web, swordfish accumulates mercury and other environmental contaminants in its tissues at concentrations higher than found in smaller fish or in the prey species themselves. Each time a swordfish consumes prey, it takes in whatever mercury or other toxins those prey had accumulated, and because mercury doesn't break down or excrete easily, it builds up in the swordfish's muscle tissue over time. This is why health authorities recommend limiting consumption of swordfish, particularly for pregnant women and young children. The fish itself isn't inherently toxic, but the accumulated mercury in its flesh can reach levels that pose risks with regular consumption. It's an unfortunate consequence of the swordfish's position in the food web, a reminder that even the ocean's top predators are affected by pollutants that humans introduce into their environment. From the swordfish's perspective, though, its diet represents success. The ability to feed across such a wide range of prey types and sizes, from microscopic zooplankton as a larva to substantial fish and squid as an adult, allows swordfish to thrive in diverse environments and conditions. They're not dependent on any single prey species, so fluctuations in one population don't necessarily leave them without food. And their willingness to hunt at different depths and times of day further expands their access to prey, reducing competition with other predators that might be more restricted in their habits. As you drift deeper towards sleep, imagine the varied ocean that feeds the swordfish, the schools of silverfish flashing through surface waters, the squid with their color-changing skin hovering in the twilight zone, the tiny transparent larvae of countless species drifting with the currents, all of them part of the great cycle of consumption and growth that sustains the swordfish and, through it, the ocean ecosystem itself. The swordfish swims through this abundance, hunting, always hunting, taking what it needs to survive and grow and eventually reproduce, passing its remarkable adaptations on to another generation. Reproduction in swordfish is a process shaped by the fish's wide-ranging migrations and its occupation of diverse ocean habitats. Unlike salmon that return to specific rivers to spawn or reef fish that defend particular territories for breeding, swordfish reproduce in the open ocean, their spawning activities distributed across vast areas and timed to coincide with conditions that maximize the survival chances of their offspring. Sexual maturity arrives relatively quickly for swordfish compared to some long-lived marine species. Females typically reach reproductive maturity when they're between 4 and 5 years old, at which point they measure somewhere around 120 to 150 centimeters in fork length. From lower jaw to the fork of the tail, males mature slightly earlier and at smaller sizes, usually around 3 to 4 years of age and 100 to 120 centimeters. These are general figures that vary with regional populations and conditions. In waters where food is abundant and growth rates are fast, swordfish might mature somewhat earlier. In less productive regions or during periods of poor conditions, maturity might be delayed. But on average, a swordfish becomes capable of reproduction within the first half-decade of its life, which is reasonable given that the maximum lifespan is probably somewhere around 9 to 12 years for most individuals, with exceptional specimens possibly reaching 16 years or more. The reproductive season for swordfish depends strongly on water temperature. In tropical and subtropical waters that remain warm year-round, swordfish can spawn throughout the year, with no distinct breeding season limiting when reproduction occurs. Female swordfish in these regions are capable of spawning multiple times, perhaps at intervals of several weeks or months, whenever conditions are suitable and they've built up sufficient energy reserves. In more temperate regions where water temperatures fluctuate, seasonally, spawning is typically concentrated during the warmer months. In the North Atlantic, peak spawning occurs from late spring through summer, roughly from May through August. In the Mediterranean, spawning peaks in June and July when water temperatures reach their annual highs. In the South Atlantic off Brazil, spawning happens from November through February during the Southern Hemisphere's summer. The act of spawning itself is a relatively simple affair by fish reproduction standards. Swordfish do not build nests or defend territories. They don't engage in elaborate courtship dances or form long-term pair bonds. Instead, spawning appears to be a brief encounter between a male and female that may have come together specifically for reproduction or may have simply been in proximity when conditions were right. Some observations suggest that male swordfish may engage in chasing behavior during the spawning season, pursuing females through the water in what could represent either courtship or competition between males for access to females. But the details of this behavior remain poorly understood, as spawning happens in the open ocean and is rarely witnessed by humans. When spawning does occur, the process is one of external fertilization. The female releases eggs directly into the water column, while the male simultaneously releases sperm. The eggs and sperm mix in the surrounding water. Fertilization occurs externally, and the resulting embryos begin development while drifting with the currents. The number of eggs produced by a female swordfish is staggering. Estimates vary, but a large female may release between 1 million and 29 million eggs in a single spawning event. Even smaller females produce eggs numbering in the hundreds of thousands or millions. This massive egg production is necessary because the vast majority of eggs will never survive to become juvenile fish, much less adults. The eggs themselves are small, measuring between 1.6 and 1.8 millimeters in diameter. They're buoyant, floating at or near the surface where water temperatures are warmest. This surface position subjects the eggs to various risks, including predation by filter-feeding fish and invertebrates, damage from wave action or storms, and water chemistry changes. But it also places them in the best position for development, with warm water speeding embryonic growth and abundant sunlight driving the plankton blooms that will feed the larvae once they hatch. Incubation is rapid, depending on water temperature. Swordfish eggs hatch in approximately 2.5 days. Warmer water speeds development. Cooler water slows it, but the range is relatively narrow, another reason why spawning tends to occur in warm waters, where eggs can develop quickly and larvae can emerge into favorable conditions. The newly hatched larvae are tiny and vulnerable. They measure only about 4 millimeters in length, barely visible to the naked eye, translucent and delicate. They have a small yolk sac attached to their belly that provides nutrition for their first hours or days of life. But once that yolk is absorbed, they must begin feeding immediately or they will starve. Mortality among larvae is extremely high. They're eaten by countless predators, from jellyfish to small fish. They may fail to find food quickly enough. They may drift into unfavorable water masses with temperatures or conditions that don't support their development. Of the millions of eggs a female releases, only a handful may survive to reach juvenile size. Often none do. This is why females must produce such enormous quantities of eggs, playing a numbers game where success is measured not by the survival of every offspring, but by the survival of enough offspring to maintain the population. Those larvae that do survive begin growing rapidly. They feed on zooplankton, gradually increasing in size and developing the characteristics that will mark them as swordfish. The bill begins to appear when the larvae are only about 12 millimeters long, starting as a small projection that will grow proportionally with the fish over time. Fins develop and take shape. The body elongates and narrows, losing the generic larval fish shape and becoming more streamlined. By the time a young swordfish reaches 50 centimeters in length, it has begun to lose the teeth and scales it possessed as a juvenile. Transitioning toward the toothless, scaleless condition of adults, the dorsal fin has grown to its characteristic crescent shape. The fish is now recognizably a swordfish in miniature, capable of many of the same behaviors its parents perform, though not yet large enough or mature enough to reproduce. Growth continues, at a rate that depends on food availability and water temperature. A young swordfish in productive waters with abundant prey can reach nearly 1 meter in length within its first year. Growth slows somewhat after that, but continues throughout the fish's life, with females ultimately reaching larger maximum sizes than males. Females continue to reproduce throughout their adult lives, spawning multiple times if they're in tropical waters, or once per year during the breeding season in temperate regions. Each spawning event represents a massive investment of energy. Producing millions of eggs requires substantial calories, and the female must build up fat reserves through successful feeding before she can spawn. After spawning, those reserves are depleted, and she must feed intensively to recover and prepare for the next reproductive event. Males face less of an energetic burden since sperm production requires less investment than egg production, but they still must be in good condition to reproduce successfully, as poor health or insufficient energy reserves might affect sperm quality or reproductive behavior. The locations where swordfish spawn are tied to water temperature and oceanographic conditions. In the Atlantic, Major spawning areas include the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, the Sargasso Sea, and regions off the southeastern United States. In the Mediterranean, spawning occurs throughout the basin during summer. In the Pacific, spawning areas are found in tropical and subtropical regions across the ocean's vast expanse. These spawning grounds are not necessarily fixed locations like salmon rivers or sea turtle nesting beaches. Instead, they're areas where conditions are favorable, and those conditions can shift with currents, water temperatures, and other factors. A region that serves as a spawning ground one year might be less suitable the next if oceanographic conditions change. After spawning, adult swordfish don't provide any parental care. The eggs and larvae are on their own from the moment of fertilization, drifting with currents and relying entirely on their own developing abilities to survive. This lack of parental investment is typical of most fish species and allows adult swordfish to focus their energy on their own survival and growth, which ultimately benefits future reproductive success more than caring for one particular batch of offspring would. The strategy works clearly, as swordfish populations have persisted for millions of years using this approach. The combination of massive egg production, relatively fast maturation, and multiple spawning opportunities over a lifetime means that even with the extremely high mortality rates of eggs and larvae, enough individuals survive to maintain the species. From a broader perspective, the reproductive biology of swordfish influences everything from where we find them at certain times of year to how fishing regulations are designed. Protecting spawning grounds and seasons helps ensure that enough successful reproduction occurs to sustain populations. Understanding when and where spawning happens allows managers to time fishing restrictions or closures in ways that minimize impacts on reproducing adults or developing larvae. As you rest now, picture the process unfolding across thousands of square miles of open ocean. Female swordfish heavy with eggs seeking warm water, males accompanying them or arriving independently, driven by seasonal urges encoded in their genes. The release of millions of tiny eggs into the tropical sea. The brief vulnerable period as those eggs develop, suspended in the surface waters under the hot sun. The hatching of minute larvae that must immediately begin the struggle to survive. And among those millions, the few that will persevere, that will grow, that will mature, and that will one day complete the cycle by spawning themselves, continuing an ancient lineage stretching back through time to the very origins of the swordfish family. Swordfish are highly migratory animals, undertaking seasonal movements that can span thousands of miles across ocean basins. These migrations are driven by several factors: changes in water temperature, the distribution of prey, reproductive timing, and possibly other environmental cues that researchers are still working to understand. The result is a species that doesn't stay in any one place, but instead follows routes and rhythms that have been refined over countless generations. The migratory patterns vary by region and population, but some general themes emerge from tagging studies and fisheries data. In temperate regions, swordfish typically move toward cooler, more productive waters during summer months when those areas offer abundant food. As autumn approaches and water temperatures begin to drop, they migrate toward warmer areas, sometimes moving hundreds or thousands of miles to find the conditions they prefer. In the Atlantic, for example, swordfish that spend summer months feeding in the productive waters off Canada and the northeastern United States may migrate southward as fall and winter approach. Some travel to the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, while others move offshore into the warmer waters of the central Atlantic. These movements track the seasonal temperature changes in the surface ocean, with swordfish generally following the water masses that remain within their preferred range of roughly 18 to 22 degrees Celsius. Similar patterns occur in the Pacific. Swordfish off the coast of California and into the Pacific Northwest during summer may move south toward Mexico or west into the open Pacific as temperatures cool. In the western Pacific, swordfish move northward from tropical waters during the warmer months and retreat south again in winter. The Mediterranean population shows less dramatic seasonal migration since water temperatures remain relatively stable year-round in that semi-enclosed sea, but there are still movements related to spawning and feeding. The distances covered during these migrations can be impressive. Tagging studies using satellite transmitters have tracked individual swordfish traveling several thousand miles over periods of months. One swordfish tagged off Chile was tracked moving northwest across the Pacific, covering thousands of miles before its tag stopped transmitting. Others have been tagged in one region and recaptured months or years later in completely different ocean areas, demonstrating the truly transoceanic nature of their movements. These long-distance migrations present physiological challenges that the swordfish's adaptations help it overcome. Moving through different water masses means encountering variations in temperature, sometimes quite dramatically. A swordfish migrating from warm tropical water to cool temperate feeding grounds might experience a change of 10 degrees or more in surface temperature. Without the heat organ maintaining stable brain and eye temperature, such changes might slow the fish's reactions and reduce its hunting effectiveness. But the heat organ allows the swordfish to maintain cognitive and visual performance across these temperature transitions. The migratory routes are not random wandering. Swordfish appear to follow corridors through the ocean that offer favorable conditions, whether that means appropriate temperatures, good prey availability, or simply the most efficient paths between distant areas. Some of these corridors coincide with major current systems that help transport the fish. Swimming with favorable currents reduces the energy cost of migration, allowing swordfish to cover great distances without exhausting themselves. The timing of migrations is influenced by multiple factors. Water temperature is clearly important, as swordfish have preferences and tolerances that guide their movements. Prey availability also matters. Swordfish often arrive in an area just as seasonal blooms or migrations make prey particularly abundant. For populations in temperate regions, there's also a rhythm tied to reproduction, with migrations towards spawning grounds occurring on a seasonal schedule that ensures larvae emerge into warm water at the right time of year. Not every swordfish in a population migrates in exactly the same way or at the same time. There's individual variation in when migrations begin, the routes taken and the destinations reached. Some of this variation might reflect differences in size, age or sex, with larger females following different patterns than smaller males, or juveniles moving independently of adults. Some variation might simply be individual preference or chance, with different fish finding success through slightly different strategies. The open ocean environment through which swordfish migrate is dynamic and complex. Currents shift with seasons and with longer-term climate patterns. Water temperatures fluctuate. Prey populations wax and wane. Swordfish must navigate this changing seascape using senses and instincts that we don't fully understand. They apparently possess some form of navigation ability that allows them to orient themselves in the featureless ocean and travel consistently in particular directions. How they accomplish this navigation remains an open question. Some fish use the Earth's magnetic field, sensing its variations and using them like a map. Others may use the sun's position or patterns of polarized light in the water. Chemical cues from different water masses might provide information about location, or perhaps swordfish use some combination of these methods, integrating multiple sources of information to maintain awareness of where they are and where they're going. The vertical dimension adds another layer to swordfish migration. Not only do they migrate horizontally across ocean basins, they also migrate vertically every day, as discussed earlier. This means a migrating swordfish doesn't simply swim at the surface or at one depth. It rises and falls through the water column as it travels, spending its days deep and its nights shallow, all while covering horizontal distance toward its destination. The combination of horizontal and vertical movement creates a three-dimensional migratory pathway through the ocean, a complex trajectory that takes the fish through varying conditions of temperature, pressure, light, and prey availability. Tracking and understanding these three-dimensional movements challenges researchers, who must rely on sophisticated tags that record not just location, but also depth and temperature over time. Fishing operations have historically taken advantage of swordfish migrations, timing their activities to coincide with the arrival of fish in particular areas. Before modern industrial fishing methods, seasonal migrations meant that swordfish would appear in coastal waters at predictable times, allowing local fishermen to target them when they were most accessible. Today's fishing fleets have greater range and can pursue swordfish across wider areas, but the migratory patterns still influence where and when fishing occurs. From a conservation perspective, understanding migrations is crucial for effective management. Swordfish populations that span multiple national jurisdictions or international waters require cooperation between countries to ensure that regulations are consistent and that fishing pressure in one area doesn't undermine conservation efforts in another. If swordfish spawn in one region, feed in another, and are fished in a third, managing the population requires considering all these areas together rather than treating them as separate issues. Climate change adds another dimension of uncertainty to swordfish migrations. As ocean temperatures warm and current patterns shift, the environmental cues that guide swordfish may change. Spawning areas might shift to higher latitudes as tropical waters become uncomfortably warm. Feeding grounds might move or change in productivity as prey populations respond to changing conditions. The timing of migrations might shift earlier or later in the year as seasonal cues change. Scientists are actively studying these potential changes, trying to predict how swordfish populations might respond to ongoing environmental shifts. Understanding the flexibility of swordfish behavior and physiology will be key to forecasting whether they can adapt to changing oceans or whether their migrations and survival will be disrupted. For now, swordfish continue their ancient patterns, moving through the ocean as their ancestors have done for millions of years. In spring, they appear in certain waters, drawn by warming temperatures and abundant food. In autumn, they depart again, following internal compasses toward distant waters. The cycle repeats year after year, each individual fish contributing to patterns that span entire ocean basins, connecting distant regions through the movements of a single remarkable species. As sleep draws closer now, imagine one of these journeys. A swordfish leaving tropical waters in early summer, swimming steadily northward through gradually cooling seas. Week after week of travel, diving deep during the day to hunt in the twilight zone, rising at night to feed in surface waters. The miles accumulating behind it, the distance from its birthplace growing ever greater, until finally it arrives in productive temperate waters where food is abundant and the long journey justifies itself through successful feeding. And then, months later, the return migration, swimming back toward tropical seas as autumn comes and temperatures drop, completing another cycle in a life defined by movement. For all their size and power, adult swordfish face surprisingly few natural predators. Their position near the top of the ocean food web means that only a handful of species pose any real threat to a fully grown swordfish. But the journey to adulthood passes through stages where predation is much more common, and understanding the full range of threats helps complete the picture of the swordfish's place in the ocean ecosystem. Eggs and larvae face the highest predation pressure. The millions of eggs that a female swordfish releases are nutritious packages floating near the surface, easily consumed by countless filter-feeding organisms. Small fish, jellyfish, comb jellies, and numerous invertebrates all feed on fish eggs when they're available, and swordfish eggs are no exception. The tiny larvae that hatch from surviving eggs are equally vulnerable, prey to any predator large enough to catch them, and small enough to be interested in such tiny targets. As young swordfish grow beyond the larval stage into juveniles measured in centimeters and then tens of centimeters, they graduate from being prey for plankton eaters to becoming targets for larger predators. Juvenile swordfish are eaten by numerous species of predatory fish that share their open ocean habitat: tuna, mahi-mahi, marlins, sailfishes, and various species of mackerel all prey on young swordfish when they encounter them. Sharks also take juvenile swordfish. Blue sharks, mako sharks, and other open ocean species encounter young swordfish during their own hunting activities and consume them as part of a varied diet. These sharks are fast swimmers and capable predators, well equipped to catch a small swordfish that doesn't yet possess the full defensive capabilities of an adult. But as swordfish grow larger, approaching and reaching adult size, the list of potential predators shrinks dramatically. A 200-pound swordfish is simply too large and too formidable for most predators to tackle. It can swim fast enough to escape most pursuers, it can defend itself with that dangerous bill if cornered, and its sheer size makes it a difficult and potentially dangerous target. Only the ocean's largest and most capable predators regularly take adult swordfish, and even then, predation is relatively uncommon. Killer whales or orcas are known to hunt swordfish. These intelligent social marine mammals hunt in groups and have developed techniques for taking large, dangerous prey. They can coordinate their attacks, exhausting a swordfish and inflicting injuries until it's vulnerable enough to be killed and consumed. But killer whales are not particularly common, and their diet includes many other prey species, so predation on swordfish by orcas is probably an occasional occurrence rather than a consistent pressure. Sperm whales, the deep-diving giants that spend much of their time hunting squid in the ocean's dark zones, may also occasionally prey on swordfish, though documented cases are rare and the details are unclear. Sperm whales are primarily squid specialists, but they're certainly large and powerful enough to take a swordfish if the opportunity arose. Perhaps the most dramatic interactions between swordfish and predators involve sharks, specifically the short-fin mako shark. Makos are among the fastest sharks, capable of speeds that rival or possibly exceed those of swordfish, and they're aggressive predators willing to tackle challenging prey. There have been multiple documented cases of makos found dead with swordfish bills embedded in their bodies, sometimes driven deep into the shark's head or through vital organs. These grisly discoveries tell a story of battles fought in the open ocean, encounters where a mako attempted to prey on a swordfish and the swordfish fought back with its primary weapon. In some cases, the swordfish clearly won, killing the shark with a thrust or slash from its bill. In other cases, both animals may have died from injuries sustained in the battle. These are dangerous encounters for both species, reminders that predation in the ocean is not always a simple matter of predator and prey, but sometimes a violent struggle where either or both participants may pay a high cost. Beyond predators that actively hunt swordfish, there are organisms that exploit them in other ways. More than 50 species of parasites have been documented living on or in swordfish. These include external parasites like remoras, the suckerfish that attach to large marine animals and hitchhike along, feeding on scraps and possibly consuming parasites from their host's skin. Lampreys, those primitive jawless fish with circular suction cup mouths, occasionally attach to swordfish and feed on their blood or tissue. Cookie-cutter sharks, small but remarkable sharks with specialized teeth, take circular plugs of flesh from large marine animals, including swordfish, leaving distinctive round scars. The scars fade over time but can be seen on many captured swordfish, evidence of past encounters with these unique predators. Internal parasites include various species of tapeworms and roundworms that live in the swordfish's digestive system, consuming some of the nutrients the fish has obtained from its own prey. Copepods, tiny crustaceans, may attach to the gills or skin. Myxozoans, microscopic parasites related to jellyfish, can infect various tissues. Most of these parasites probably cause limited harm to the swordfish, especially to healthy adults. The fish's immune system and general robustness allow it to tolerate some level of parasitic infection without significant impact on survival or reproduction. But heavy parasite loads can weaken a fish, and parasites may play a role in mortality for individuals that are already stressed by other factors, like injury, disease, or nutritional deficiency. Interestingly, parasites can provide valuable information to researchers, because some parasite species are region-specific. Examining which parasites a swordfish carries can indicate where that fish has been spending its time. This has been used to help delineate different swordfish populations and understand movement patterns. A swordfish caught in the Atlantic but carrying parasites typical of Mediterranean fish might have migrated from the Mediterranean recently, for example. Beyond biological threats, swordfish face environmental challenges. Ocean conditions can be harsh, especially during storms when surface waters become violently agitated. Swordfish caught near the surface during severe weather might be injured by waves or debris. Extreme temperature anomalies might push swordfish out of their preferred ranges or stress them if they cannot find suitable water. Oxygen minimum zones, areas where dissolved oxygen concentrations are very low, pose challenges in some parts of the world's oceans. These zones typically occur at intermediate depths and can restrict where swordfish can hunt, forcing them to stay above the low oxygen layer even if prey is abundant below it. By far the most significant threat to swordfish, particularly over the past century, has been human fishing. This deserves extended discussion and will be covered in a later section, but it's worth noting here that fishing mortality has, at various times and places, exceeded natural mortality by substantial margins. Humans have proven to be far more efficient at removing swordfish from the ocean than any natural predator, and managing this impact remains a critical challenge for conserving the species. Despite these various threats, healthy adult swordfish in good habitat face relatively low mortality from natural causes. Their combination of size, speed, and defensive capability places them securely near the top of the ocean food web. a position that brings relative safety from predation even as it exposes them to other risks like parasite accumulation and the eventual effects of aging. The life of a swordfish, then, is one of gradually decreasing vulnerability to predation. An egg has virtually no defenses. A larva is nearly as helpless. A juvenile gains some protection through size and speed, but remains vulnerable. An adult achieves a kind of apex status where predation is rare and threats come more from environmental factors, disease, parasites, and the gradual decline that comes with age. In the vast blue where swordfish swim, they move with the confidence of animals that have few reasons to fear what they encounter. They are the hunters far more often than the hunted, the pursuers rather than the pursued. And when they do face threats, they possess the tools to defend themselves, that formidable bill becoming a weapon of last resort when escape is not possible. The ocean's ecosystem is built on these relationships, predator and prey, parasite and host, all interconnected in ways that define not just individual survival but the structure of life in the sea itself. The distribution of swordfish across the world's oceans is remarkably broad. These fish are truly global wanderers found in temperate and tropical waters of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. They're absent only from the coldest polar regions where water temperatures drop below their tolerance range. But everywhere else, from coastlines to the deepest parts of the open ocean, swordfish may be encountered. In the Atlantic, swordfish range from Newfoundland and the North Sea in the north to Argentina and South Africa in the south, covering essentially the entire basin. They're found in the Caribbean, throughout the Gulf of Mexico, around the Azores and other mid-Atlantic islands, and in the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean population is particularly interesting because it appears to be somewhat genetically distinct from the Atlantic population, suggesting limited exchange between the two, despite the connection through the Strait of Gibraltar. The Pacific distribution is even more expansive, given the ocean's vast size. Swordfish are found from Alaska and northern Japan in the north to New Zealand and Chile in the south. They occur throughout the central Pacific, around Hawaii and other island groups. The eastern Pacific waters off California, Mexico, and Central America support substantial swordfish populations, as do the waters off Southeast Asia and Australia in the western Pacific. In the Indian Ocean, swordfish are distributed from the Arabian Sea and East African coast across to Indonesia and Western Australia. They're found around Madagascar in the Bay of Bengal and throughout the tropical and subtropical regions of this ocean that often receives less attention than the Atlantic and Pacific. Within this global range, swordfish show preferences for particular conditions. Water temperature is a primary factor influencing their distribution. They generally prefer surface temperatures between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, though they can tolerate a much wider range, from around 5 degrees to 27 degrees. This temperature tolerance is among the widest of any billfish species, likely enabled by their heat organ, which allows them to maintain function even when ambient water temperatures drop considerably. Swordfish are most abundant in areas where oceanographic conditions enhance productivity. These include regions where upwelling brings nutrients to the surface, supporting blooms of plankton that feed the small fish and squid that in turn become prey for swordfish. The edges of current systems where different water masses meet often concentrate prey and provide the kinds of temperature gradients that swordfish seem to favor. In the Atlantic, areas of high swordfish abundance include the Georgia's Bank and adjacent waters off the northeastern United States, the Blake Plateau off the Carolinas, the waters around the Azores, and various regions in the Mediterranean. In the Pacific, hotspots include waters off Southern California and Baja, Mexico, areas around Hawaii, and regions off New Zealand and southeastern Australia. Depth distribution varies with behavior, as already discussed. Swordfish spend their days in deep water, commonly between 400 and 800 meters, and their nights near the surface. So while they're always in the same general ocean area, their specific location in the water column changes with the daily cycle. This means that technically, swordfish can be found from the surface down to depths of several thousand meters, though most of their time is spent in the upper 1,000 meters. The populations in different ocean basins are managed as separate stocks for fisheries purposes, recognizing that mixing between basins is probably very limited or non-existent. Within each ocean, there may be further subdivision into regional stocks. The North Atlantic swordfish are managed as a separate stock from South Atlantic swordfish, for example, even though there's undoubtedly some mixing between them. These stock boundaries matter for conservation and management, but don't represent hard biological barriers. Swordfish don't recognize the lines humans draw on maps, and individuals certainly move across the boundaries we've designated. But from a practical standpoint, treating different regions as separate populations allows for management strategies tailored to local conditions and fishing pressures. Seasonal distribution shifts complicate the picture further. The maps of where swordfish are found change with the seasons as migrations move individuals between regions. Summer distribution extends farther toward the poles in both hemispheres as swordfish follow warming waters. Winter distribution contracts toward the tropics and subtropics. A map of swordfish distribution in January would look noticeably different from a map in July, particularly in temperate regions where seasonal temperature changes are most pronounced. Habitat within the open ocean is more uniform than habitat on land or even in coastal seas. There are no mountains or valleys in the pelagic environment, no forests or deserts, just water extending in 3 dimensions. But there are still habitat features that matter to swordfish. The location of the thermocline, the boundary between warm surface water and cold deep water, influences where swordfish hunt and spend their time. The presence of ocean features like eddies, fronts or seamounts can concentrate prey and attract swordfish. Some swordfish associate with floating objects, a behavior seen in various pelagic fish species. Logs, mats of seaweed, or even human debris like fishing gear can serve as focal points that attract baitfish, which in turn attract predators. Swordfish may spend time near such objects, though they don't show the strong association that some tuna species do. The coastlines themselves are less important to swordfish than to many fish species. Unlike salmon that return to rivers or groupers that live on reefs, swordfish rarely come very close to shore. They're occasionally found in coastal waters, particularly where deep water approaches the coast as it does along parts of California, the eastern United States, and various other locations. But generally, they're animals of the open ocean, seldom venturing into water shallow enough to see the bottom. This offshore lifestyle has implications for human interactions. Swordfish can't be easily observed from shore. They don't show up in tide pools or shallow bays where casual observers might encounter them. Instead, seeing a live swordfish typically requires traveling offshore into deep water, either aboard a fishing vessel or a research boat. This distance from land and from everyday human experience may be part of why swordfish retain a certain mystique, less familiar to most people than coastal species that can be observed more easily. Globally, swordfish populations have fluctuated over time in response to fishing pressure and environmental changes. Some regional populations have been depleted by intensive fishing, others have recovered following management interventions, and some remain relatively healthy. Understanding the distribution and abundance of swordfish in different regions is an ongoing scientific effort that combines data from fisheries, tagging studies, oceanographic surveys, and population modeling. Recent years have seen improved stock assessments for many swordfish populations, as data collection has expanded and analytical methods have improved. This has allowed for more precise estimates of population sizes, fishing mortality rates, and sustainable harvest levels. But significant uncertainties remain, especially for populations in the Pacific and Indian Oceans where fisheries monitoring is less comprehensive than in the Atlantic. As you picture the global distribution of swordfish now, imagine a map of the world's oceans with dots representing individual fish. Thousands of dots scattered across tropical and temperate waters, each one a swordfish going about its life, hunting, migrating, avoiding predators, eventually reproducing, clusters of dots where conditions are particularly favorable, sparse scattering in less productive regions, and always movement, as the dots shift and flow with seasons and migrations, painting a dynamic picture of a species that belongs not to any one place but to the ocean as a whole. The relationship between swordfish and humans extends back centuries, perhaps even millennia. Archaeological evidence suggests that people living near the Mediterranean Sea were hunting swordfish as far back as ancient times, taking advantage of seasonal migrations that brought the fish close to shore where they could be harpooned from small boats. This long history of exploitation has intensified dramatically in recent decades as fishing technology improved and global demand for seafood increased, creating conservation challenges but also success stories that demonstrate what effective management can achieve. Traditional swordfish fishing was a skilled craft practiced primarily in the Mediterranean and later off the eastern United States. Fishermen used harpoons, approaching basking swordfish quietly in small boats and striking them with hand-thrown spears. This required patience, skill, and detailed knowledge of swordfish behavior. The fishermen had to predict where swordfish would appear based on season and conditions. They had to spot the fish from a distance and maneuver into position without disturbing them, and they had to make an accurate throw that would both strike the fish and allow them to retrieve it. This harpooning method imposed natural limits on catch rates. Only one fish could be taken at a time. Each catch required significant effort and skill, and conditions had to be right for basking fish to be visible and accessible. As a result, historical fishing pressure on swordfish, while locally significant in some areas, probably had limited impact on overall population levels. That changed in the latter half of the 20th century, with the spread of industrial fishing methods, particularly long-line fishing. Long-line gear consists of a main line, sometimes dozens of miles long, from which shorter branch lines hang at intervals. Each branch line terminates in a baited hook. The gear is set and left to soak for hours or even days before being retrieved, and a single long line set can have hundreds or thousands of hooks. Long lines proved devastatingly effective at catching swordfish. By fishing at depths where swordfish feed during the day, or by setting gear at night when they're near the surface, long-line vessels could catch multiple fish per set, day after day. The efficiency of this method, multiplied by the number of vessels operating, led to catch rates that far exceeded historical levels, and in many regions exceeded the sustainable yield of swordfish populations. By the 1990s, several swordfish stocks were showing clear signs of overfishing. Catch rates were declining, despite increasing fishing effort. The average size of captured fish was getting smaller, as large adults were removed faster than they could be replaced. Some populations, particularly in the North Atlantic, were estimated to have declined to a fraction of their historical abundance. These concerns led to the rise of conservation campaigns aimed at reducing fishing pressure on swordfish. One of the most visible was the Give Swordfish a Break campaign in the United States, launched in 1998 by conservation organizations and supported by many chefs and restaurants who agreed to remove swordfish from their menus temporarily. The campaign raised public awareness about overfishing and put pressure on regulatory agencies to take action. Management responses included catch limits, size restrictions, and area closures. In the United States, minimum size limits were established to allow juvenile swordfish to mature and reproduce before being caught. Certain areas where swordfish spawn or where juveniles congregate were closed to fishing during critical periods. Total allowable catch limits were set based on scientific assessments of sustainable harvest levels. Internationally, the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, known as ICAT, which manages highly migratory species in the Atlantic, including swordfish, implemented similar measures. Member countries agreed to reduce their catches, to enforce size limits and gear restrictions, and to improve data collection so that the status of swordfish populations could be better assessed. These management efforts, while controversial and sometimes opposed by fishing industries that depended on swordfish catches, proved effective. Over the following decade, North Atlantic swordfish populations showed clear signs of recovery. By 2009, ICAT declared that the North Atlantic stock was fully rebuilt, meaning it had recovered to sustainable levels. This represents one of the success stories in fisheries management, demonstrating that even heavily depleted fish stocks can recover if effective measures are implemented and followed. Other swordfish populations have not fared as well. Some Pacific stocks remain depleted, or their status is uncertain due to insufficient data. The Mediterranean population, while recovering from earlier lows, continues to face high fishing pressure and concerns about the catch of undersized fish. Indian Ocean stocks are also of concern, with evidence suggesting overfishing may be occurring in at least some regions. Current fishing methods for swordfish include long lines, harpoons, and gill nets, each with different characteristics and challenges. Long lines remain the most common commercial method worldwide, but are associated with significant bycatch of other species, including sea turtles, sharks, and marine mammals. Efforts to reduce bycatch have led to modifications like circle hooks that are less likely to be swallowed deeply by turtles, and requirements to carry devices that can safely release hooked turtles if they're caught. More recent innovations include deep-set buoy gear, sometimes called deep-set vertical lines or fishing with active buoys. This method involves setting individual vertical lines at depths where swordfish forage during the day, with buoys at the surface marking each line's location. Because the gear is set deep during daylight when sea turtles and marine mammals are near the surface, bycatch is dramatically reduced compared to traditional night-set long lines. This method shows promise as a more selective and sustainable way to catch swordfish, and it's being adopted in some fisheries, including off California. Recreational fishing for swordfish also occurs, particularly off Florida and in other areas where the fish are accessible to sport fishermen. This fishery is relatively small compared to commercial catches, but is economically valuable due to the high cost of charters and the challenge of catching these powerful fish. Recreational fishing is subject to its own regulations, including catch limits and size restrictions. From a consumer perspective, swordfish is valued as a high-quality food fish. The flesh is firm and meaty, with a mild flavor that appeals to many people and the ability to hold up to grilling and other cooking methods that would break apart more delicate fish. This has made swordfish a staple on restaurant menus and in fish markets, with some forms like pumpkin swordfish with their orange-tinted flesh commanding premium prices. But there's a significant health concern associated with eating swordfish: mercury accumulation. As a large, long-lived predator at the top of the food web, swordfish accumulate mercury in their tissues at concentrations higher than smaller fish or those lower on the food chain. Mercury exposure has known health effects, particularly for developing fetuses and young children, where it can affect neurological development. For this reason, health authorities recommend that pregnant women who might become pregnant, and young children limit their consumption of swordfish to 1 serving per month or avoid it entirely. This creates a complex situation where swordfish are valued as food and support important fisheries, but their consumption carries risks that must be balanced against benefits. Better understanding and communication of these risks helps consumers make informed choices. Beyond fishing, humans impact swordfish through broader environmental changes. Climate change is altering ocean temperatures and chemistry, potentially affecting swordfish distribution, prey availability, and spawning success. Pollution introduces contaminants beyond mercury, including persistent organic pollutants and plastics that can affect fish health. Ocean acidification, caused by absorption of excess atmospheric carbon dioxide, may affect prey species that swordfish depend on, particularly those with calcium carbonate structures like some mollusks and crustaceans. Marine debris poses direct threats through entanglement or ingestion. Swordfish have been found with plastic in their stomachs, though whether this causes significant harm is unclear. Lost or abandoned fishing gear, called ghost gear, continues to fish indefinitely, potentially catching and killing swordfish and other species. Conservation of swordfish going forward requires balancing multiple objectives: maintaining healthy populations, supporting fisheries that depend on the species, protecting marine ecosystems more broadly, and addressing the environmental changes that affect ocean life. This is complex work requiring international cooperation, sound science, adaptive management, and willingness to make difficult decisions when necessary. The success in rebuilding the North Atlantic swordfish population provides a model and motivation. It demonstrates that even severely depleted stocks can recover if proper measures are taken. It shows the value of international cooperation through bodies like ICCAT, and it illustrates that conservation and sustainable use are not mutually exclusive but can be achieved together with appropriate management. As fishing technology continues to advance and human pressure on ocean resources continues to grow, maintaining this balance will be an ongoing challenge. But with better understanding of swordfish biology and ecology, improved monitoring of populations and fisheries, and commitment to sustainable practices, there's reason to hope that swordfish will continue to swim through the world's oceans for generations to come, magnificent hunters that embody the power and mystery of the open sea. Now, as the story of the swordfish draws to a gentle close, let's take a moment to reflect on what makes these creatures so remarkable. Through all the details we've explored, certain themes emerge, patterns that reveal not just facts about a species, but insights into how life adapts to challenging environments, and how different pieces of the ocean ecosystem fit together. The swordfish is, in many ways, a fish of contradictions. It's cold-blooded yet capable of warming its most vital organs. It's a solitary hunter yet participates in migrations that follow ancient paths shared by its kind. It possesses a weapon that looks designed for stabbing yet uses it primarily for slashing. It lacks scales and teeth as an adult, yet thrives as one of the ocean's most successful predators. These contradictions resolve when you understand the specifics of the swordfish's lifestyle and adaptations. Each unusual feature makes sense in the context of the others. The heat organ allows the swordfish to hunt effectively in cold, deep water, which gives it access to prey that other predators can't exploit as well. The bill slashing technique works perfectly with the toothless mouth that swallows prey whole. The solitary hunting style matches the distribution of prey and the three-dimensional openness of the pelagic environment. The swordfish reminds us that the ocean is vast and mostly unknown. Despite being a species that humans have fished for centuries, that appears in markets and on restaurant menus, that has been studied by scientists using modern technology, there remain significant gaps in our knowledge. We don't fully understand their navigation abilities. We have only rough estimates of their maximum lifespan. The details of their spawning behavior remain poorly documented. Even basic questions about population size and structure carry uncertainties. This incompleteness of knowledge is not a failure of science, but a reflection of the ocean's immensity and inaccessibility. Studying animals that live in the open ocean, that dive to great depths, that migrate across thousands of miles, presents challenges that land-based or even coastal research doesn't face. Every insight we gain about swordfish requires significant effort and often novel approaches. Yet despite these challenges, the picture of the swordfish that emerges from scientific study and traditional knowledge is one of elegant adaptation. This is a fish that has found ways to exploit a difficult environment, that has evolved solutions to problems that most fish can't overcome, and that occupies a role in ocean ecosystems that few other species can fill. The swordfish's success is evident in its broad distribution across the world's temperate and tropical oceans, in its abundance in certain regions despite fishing pressure, and in its persistence through millions of years of changing ocean conditions. This is not a species barely hanging on at the margins of survival. Rather, it's a dominant predator that, when given reasonable management and protection, demonstrates resilience and adaptability. For humans, the swordfish represents both an opportunity and a responsibility. The opportunity is to continue benefiting from this remarkable species, whether through sustainable fishing that provides food and livelihoods, through recreational fishing that offers challenge and connection to the ocean, or simply through the knowledge that such magnificent creatures exist and share the planet with us. The responsibility is to ensure that our impacts don't undermine the swordfish's long-term persistence. This means managing fisheries sustainably, protecting critical habitats, addressing broader environmental issues like climate change and pollution, and maintaining the scientific research and monitoring that allows us to understand how swordfish populations are doing and what they need. The recovery of North Atlantic swordfish populations after severe depletion shows that this responsibility can be met successfully. It demonstrates human capacity to recognize problems, implement solutions, and achieve positive outcomes even for heavily exploited marine species. That success should inspire continued effort to conserve swordfish and other ocean species facing similar challenges. As you rest here on the edge of sleep, the swordfish continues its ancient patterns. Somewhere in the ocean right now, at this very moment, a swordfish is hunting, diving into dark depths in pursuit of squid, its bill slashing through schools of smaller fish, its warm eyes and brain processing the environment with clarity undiminished by the cold water surrounding it. Other swordfish are migrating, swimming steadily toward distant waters they've never seen but somehow know to find. Still others are spawning, releasing millions of eggs into warm currents, continuing the reproductive cycle that has sustained their kind for ages beyond counting. The ocean is vast, covering more than 70% of Earth's surface, containing depths that exceed the heights of the tallest mountains, holding secrets that will likely never be fully revealed. In that vastness, the swordfish finds its home, a hunter perfectly suited to life in the open blue, carrying adaptations that push the boundaries of what we thought fish could do. Your journey through the world of the swordfish comes to an end now, though their journey continues. The details may fade as sleep takes hold, the specifics of heat organs and hunting techniques drifting into memory like dreams. But perhaps something essential remains, a sense of wonder at the complexity and capability of life, an appreciation for creatures that thrive in environments we can barely imagine, a reminder that the ocean holds marvels we're still discovering. Let the gentle rhythm of waves wash through your mind now. Let the image of the swordfish fade into the peaceful darkness of deep sleep. You've traveled with these remarkable hunters from the surface to the twilight zone and back, across oceans and through seasons. From egg to adult to the next generation. You've seen how they're built, how they hunt, how they reproduce, how they fit into the broader web of ocean life. Rest now, knowing that the swordfish swims on, out there in the blue expanse, living the life that millions of years of evolution have prepared it for. A testament to the power of adaptation and the endless creativity of the natural world. The ocean is breathing, rising and falling with ancient tides. The swordfish is moving through its depths, solitary but part of something larger, individual but connected to all the life around it. And you, drifting towards sleep, have touched that world briefly, have glimpsed the life of these remarkable creatures, and can rest in the knowledge that such wonders exist, whether we wake or sleep, whether we know them fully or only partially. The swordfish, the remarkable hunter of the open blue, continues its journey. And now, you can let go and drift into your own depths, into sleep that is peaceful and restorative, into dreams that may carry hints of vast blue waters and silver shapes moving through them, until morning comes again and wakes you to a world where, somewhere far away, the swordfish is still hunting, still swimming, still living its ancient life in the great ocean that cradles and connects us all. Sleep well,